Greetings and salutations, everybody, and welcome back. Unless you're here for the first time, in that case, welcome for the first time. I like to make these little videos about films I enjoy and want to share. Occasionally they are new, but for the most part, they're usually a throwback of some sort or another. They're also often horror, and though I do try to work in some 80s films that aren't horror every now and then, just like titles which I don't really hear much about anymore, and I'm wondering if they're actually still good and worth checking out. And that's the whole thing, is that I would rather share what I enjoy and what I would recommend rather than anything else, though occasionally I will speak about one that I didn't like, such as in the cases of maybe revisiting an entire franchise or a boxed set review. But other than that, like I said, I'd rather make videos about films that I enjoy and want to share rather than spend any time raining on somebody's parade and spending any time making a video about a film that I didn't like. So, now that all that's out of the way, recently I revisited the 2001 film Donnie Darko, which stars Jake Gyllenhaal, Jenna Malone, Maggie Gyllenhaal, and a host of others make appearances such as Noah Wyle, Drew Barrymore, Patrick Swayze, Mary McDonnell, James Duvall, who I mentioned in a previous video a few weeks ago for Sushi Girl, which I'll link to at the end, and we even have Seth Rogen's first film role in this as well. Now, before I begin, let me just say that this video also focuses on the presentation of this film, which is on The Last Drive-In with Joe Bob Briggs and Darcy the Mail Girl. Got a little shirt right here, so they can both be represented, which is on Shudder and was part of their summer school specials. So like the Elvira Movie Macabre presentations that I've been reviewing as well, which I have a bunch of those somewhere on my channel, I'll give a bit about the film first before speaking about the episode in this presentation itself. So, Donnie Darko. The synopsis for which is as follows. After narrowly escaping a bizarre accident, a troubled teenager is plagued by visions of a man in a large rabbit suit who manipulates him to commit a series of crimes. So this film has a reputation of being very hard to understand. And to some extent, I can kind of agree with that, just in that there are a lot of details in this, small bits here and there, which aren't really made absolutely clear what it's representing, or at least, very easy to understand, unless you really want to sit down and overanalyze it. But overall, I feel like the best way to kind of take in this movie is simply by being along for this ride. As the synopsis says, our lead character, Donnie, narrowly escapes death after a bizarre accident at his home, which luckily he was suffering from some sleepwalking issues, so he actually wasn't there for the accident to have anything bad happen to him. But Donnie also has some mental health issues. He's in counseling and he's on medication, which this situation is kind of causing him to see this giant demonic-looking bunny rabbit named Frank, who tells him that the world is ending soon. He even gives him an exact time as to how much time is actually left on this countdown. Now, through these appearances of Frank, Donnie begins to kind of partake in some crimes around town, getting himself kind of in a little bit of trouble here as people are trying to find out who's committing these crimes. But along with this, he's also learning about physics and time travel from a book that he discovered, how his interactions with Frank have gone and some of their little discussions, as well as discussions with a teacher of his. And he's also getting to know this new kid in town, played by Jenna Malone. He's dealing with some bullies at school, one of which is played by Seth Rogen, and along with other kids at the school, he has to attend these cheesy little self-help presentations and exercises led by a character played by Patrick Swayze. So yeah, there's a lot kind of jumbled in there, and there's a lot of loose ends and aspects of it which are open to interpretation, but all in all, the basic arc is he's got this insomnia and sleepwalking issue, narrowly escapes death, he's got mental health issues and is on medication, he's getting to know this new kid in town, he's got issues with, his teachers and his family, but we also still get a wrapped up ending which quite literally brings everything full circle. Now this film feels more like it's a journey in the overall vibe, which I enjoy more than waiting for some explosive and exciting climax with every answer given. Seeing Donnie experience what seems to be like a mental breakdown of sorts, but ultimately wrapping back up by the end with the sense that for the most part and for most characters, everything is going to be okay in these crazy situations that have been happening around town. Now that sounds pretty vague. That's because the only other way to really get into this film, in my opinion, is to go kind of play by play and kind of analyzing it rather than just telling what it's, roughly about. So instead, I'll simply say, without, giving any spoilers, it's available on Shudder, as well as some other platforms. It isn't as confusing as some may feel, at least in my opinion. and it's definitely worth sitting down to, especially with Joe Bob Briggs and Darcy, the mail girl, on The Last Drive-In on Shudder, which is how I had last watched this during their summer school presentation. So I have a video from a few years back about The Last Drive-In, which I will link to at the end of this one. But as a quick refresher, we have Joe Bob Briggs presenting this film along with his co-host Darcy the Mail Girl. One thing that Joe Bob always does well is to dig up tons of information about the film itself from the production and distribution standpoint, as well as interesting tidbits of information which may be, very difficult to track down. He dissects aspects of pretty much every film that he presents, and digs up so much information that he somehow is also able to just give you a lot of information, a lot of interesting stuff, and make it actually worth sitting down. It's actually kind of fun to just hear how he presents a lot of this, particularly with the banter that he usually gets going on back and forth with Darcy the Mail Girl. But where this presentation stands out is how over the top they went with everything. So in the past, previous seasons would usually have a double feature, and sometimes it was more to do with the film than any of their little skits or banter going on, unless it was a special occasion, like some sort of a holiday presentation. But since they've changed this now to being single features spread out over many more weeks, this is one which fell into this realm of really having gone overboard on these skits. I mean, they did an amazing job. They literally set up a time travel story with Darcy hopping through a wormhole they created there on set. So for 2 of the breaks within the show, she's just lost in time, and by the time she comes back, she's fully decked out 80s style with even more interesting info about the year where this film takes place, which I believe is in 1988. And to top it all off, as we kind of close into the end of their presentation and the end of this film, they had Bob Burney on, who handled much of the marketing around this film as well as many others, to give us even more detailed stories about how this film was kind of presented and received at festivals before it hit its release. What that release was like, and how strange it was that somehow this film was able to gain a really huge following well after the release. So where Elvira and her Movie Macabre presentations, she really has a heavy load to carry in providing fun entertainment such as her skits during her breaks and her little pop-ins to what is usually a very bad film, which is hard to kind of get through, Joe Bob and Darcy in most cases have a decent film worth presenting and kind of sticking around for. And Donnie Darko is an example of not just a decent film being presented, but an excellent one, which is more than worth checking out. And speaking of checking out, thanks for checking out this latest video here for Donnie Darko as presented on The Last Drive-In with Joe Bob Briggs and Darcy the Mail Girl. That's a very long title. This is likely a longer video than some of the ones I've been doing recently. Speaking of which, there seems to be something strange afoot happening with the algorithm. I don't know if any of you have noticed it, but you may have missed a few of my videos, especially like the last 3 to 6 of them, as I've missed ones from several channels. I seem to be showing a lot of results coming up for videos that I saw years ago for some reason. YouTube is suggesting to me and not suggesting ones that I'm subscribed to, even if I have that bell hit. So don't forget to check out on some of the previous videos of mine leading up to this one in case you missed any. But that's all I got for this one. Like I said, Donnie Darko is available on Shudder, both as its own entity, separately just watching Donnie Darko, or watching it as part of The Last Drive-In. It's also available on other providers if interested. But anyways, thanks for coming by and for sticking around to the end. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that little bell icon to see if YouTube actually starts suggesting this stuff to you. But anyways, that's all I got. Thanks for coming by, and I will see you in the next one.